The Zelthari did not understand screaming until they met humanity. They had cataloged 17,000 sentient species by the time Earth's transmissions crackled across their listening arrays, poems encoded in radio waves, equations etched into orbital debris, war cries mistaken for folk songs. The Federation's philosophers dissected these artifacts with clinical fascination, dismissing human conflict as the flailing of children who had yet to grasp the sacred geometries of war. Violence, to the Zelthari, was a liturgy, precise, ritualized, resolved not by blood but by the cold calculus of deterrence. Then came Proxima Centauri. The battle defied translation. Zelthari scouts orbiting the fray recorded human vessels, ungainly, rivet-clad things, colliding with dreadnoughts like drunkards brawling in zero-G. They broadcast no surrender harmonics, no elegantly structured ultimatums. Instead, they hurled asteroids stripped from mining belts, detonated their own fuel lines to blind sensors, and chanted through ruptured comms in a dead Nordic tongue. The Federation's analysts labeled it tactical insanity. The Zelthari cadets forced to study it years later would call it something else. A revelation. One figure haunted the footage, a human commander, her face a map of scarred pragmatism, swigging from a canteen as her ship carved a kamikaze arc through the Zelthari formation. Later, archivists would note the label on her flask, hydration, and debate its symbolism. But in that moment, as kinetic slugs tore through crystalline hulls and the void echoed with something older than strategy, the Zelthari glimpsed the terrible truth they'd spent eons denying. War had no language. War had no rules. War in human hands was a confession. By the time the cadets mutinied, it was too late. The scream had already taken root. Chapter 1. The observation deck of the Zelthari Orbital Academy hummed with the low amniotic resonance of a species that had never known violence beyond metaphor. Cadet Kevrick's tentacles curled reflexively around the gel-padded rail as the holographic projectors flickered to life, casting jagged shadows across the domed ceiling. Bioluminescent markings rippled down his peers' cephalic ridges, nervous indigo, scholarly amber. Today's lecture, The Human Anomaly, at Proxima Centauri, a footnote in the Federation's Grand Chronicle of Civil Wars, or so the syllabus claimed. The air tasted of ionized lavender, the Zelthari sent for pedagogical solemnity. Kevrick's tertiary heart quickened as the hologram resolved into a grainy pre-space flight recording. Human warships, crude alloys riveted like afterthoughts, swarmed a Zelthari dreadnought. Their hulls bore hand-painted sigils, a fanged serpent, a skeletal bird, primitive, unseemly. And yet they won, Kevrick thought, his tentacles nodding. The footage juddered. A human voice crackled through the Academy's sonosphere, untranslated, not the calibrated harmonics of Zelthari war sonnets, but a guttural roar. Viking chants, the archival footnote called them. Kevrick's ink sacs pulsed as the human vessels detonated their own engines to spin asteroids into projectile weapons. A dreadnought's crystalline hull shattered under 100 megatons of rock and recklessness. Observe the tactical incoherence, droned Instructor Valora, her voice a breeze through choral. No formation, no surrender protocols. They fought as animals. A cadet to Kevrick's left emitted a subsonic whine, her bioluminescence flickering into stress violet. The humans on screen died laughing, their final transmissions a cacophony of shouts and off-key singing. One officer, female, her face a topography of scars, drank from a canteen mid-battle, her eyes fixed on the dying dreadnought. Later, Kevrick would learn the canteen's label read hydration. Later, he'd wish he hadn't. The hologram dissolved. Silence pooled in the chamber, thick as nebular dust. Kevrick's neural frills caught the edges of his peers' telepathic spillage, shame flickers, disorientation. Zelthari warfare was a dance of gravitic harmonics and elegant stalemates. To kill a ship was to solve an equation, to hate a ship unthinkable. Yet here were creatures who weaponized chaos like a creed, who turned their deaths into dirges. He drifted to the Academy's arboretum, seeking the scent of dusk blossoms to purge the human stench of iron and sweat. The glass-domed garden usually soothed him with its fractal topiaries and whispering fountains, but today the water's song felt arrhythmic, broken. A junior cadet huddled beneath a helix tree, her tentacles compulsively braiding and unbraiding. "They'll expunge the footage," she pulsed telepathically, her mind voice shrill. "The High Synod can't let such barbarism," Kevrick supplied silently, but the word curdled in his mind. The human female's face lingered behind his eyelids, not triumphant, but weary, a poet's eyes in a butcher's face. Night cycle brought no solace. Kevrick floated in his dormitory's nutrient bath, neural frills parsing the Academy's subsonic murmur. Normally it sang of order, of the Federation's trillion-year lineage. Now he heard fractures. Cadets clustered in shadowed alcoves, their bioluminescence dimmed to conspiratorial twilight. Arguments hummed through the walls. "We're not ready. They'll eat us alive. Install panic rooms." At least, by dawn, the mutiny crystallized. 100 cadets gathered in the refectory, tentacles laced in protest chains. Instructor Valora hovered at the periphery, her markings pale with disbelief. "We won't crew ships without human safeguards," pulsed Cadet Samara, her mind voice trembling but resolute. "Their tactics are insectile, unpredictable." Kevrick watched from a ventilation shaft, ink sacs burning. He should join them, should recoil from the humans' fever dream warfare. Instead he found himself dissecting the battle footage frame by neural frame. The human commander's eyes, the way she'd positioned her ship not for glory, but to shield a crippled frigate, a kamikaze ballet. The Federation's envoy arrived at mid-cycle, her carapace gleaming with diplomatic phosphors. "Your concerns are noted," she intoned, extruding a conciliatory pheromone cloud, but the human conflict was an aberration. Their species lacks, a cacophony of bioluminescent flares cut her off. Cadets rippled in agitation, their telepathic shouts overloading the sonosphere. Kevrick pressed a tentacle to the viewport, watching the envoy retreat. Through the Academy's crystalline walls, the stars glared down, cold and innumerable. 3 cycles later, the humans sent their rebuttal. She came unarmed, which was itself a provocation. General Ida Volkov's boots clanged against the Academy's pristine floors, a sound no Zelthari had ever made. Her uniform hung loose, scorched at the cuffs, the canteen at her hip sloshed faintly. Kevrick's olfactory ducts detected ethanol, and something saltier. Volkov paused beneath the arboretum dome, squinting at the helix trees. "Pretty," she rasped. The word seemed to surprise her. Cadets clustered behind 4 screens, bioluminescence flaring, defensive crimson. Volkov snorted, unscrewing her canteen. The envoy's announcement still hung in the air. Cultural liaison, motivational speaker, euphemisms for a truth no one would voice. They needed to learn savagery. "You," Volkov pointed at Kevrick with a calloused hand. He realized he'd drifted closer than the others. "What's your name, Squid?" The insult should have stung. Instead, Kevrick found himself unfurling his neural frills in the respect posture. "Cadet Kevrick Liaison Volkov." She took a swig, eyes crinkling. "Call me Ironmother, everyone else does." The canteen's label glinted in the starlight. Hydration. Somewhere in the Academy's depths, a panic room's shields thrummed to life. Volkov didn't flinch. Chapter 2. The Academy's hydroponic gardens reeked of spilled ethanol and ozone. Volkov's canteen lay upturned near a trampled dusk blossom bed, its hydration label glinting beneath the sterile light of Zelthar Prime. Cadet Kevrick hovered at the arboretum's edge, neural frills twitching as he parsed the aftermath of what the humans called orientation. Scorch marks spiderwebbed the pearlescent floor, where Volkov had demonstrated close quarters problem solving via live plasma torch. The Zelthari custodial drones lay in a sparking heap, dissected for parts. Unpredictable, Kevrick thought, the word curdling in his mind. The humans' victory at Proxima Centauri hadn't been chaos, it had been chaos curated. a violence as precise as it was obscene. Volkov's voice echoed from the training spire. Sandpaper rough. You fight like accountants. You ever seen a real tentacle fight? Kevrick drifted toward the sound, ink sacs pulsing. The spire's grav plates had been disabled, turning the chamber into a zero-G sarcophagus. Cadets floated like bioluminescent jellyfish, tentacles coiled defensively. Volkov anchored herself to a bulkhead with a magnetic boot, hefting a Zelthari fire extinguisher as a club. Your first mistake, she barked, is thinking you need air to brawl. She kicked off, colliding with Cadet Samara. The cadet's telepathic scream spiked through Kevrick's neural frills, a burst of panic-sharpened harmonics. Volkov wrapped Samara's tentacles into a knot, leveraging the extinguisher against her throat. Second mistake, mercy. Samara's bioluminescence flickered surrender white. Volkov released her, floating backward. Third mistake, assuming I'd care. The cadets stared, their markings rippling confusion amber. Zelthari combat was a ballet of feints and countermaneuvers, resolved via honorific poetry. Volkov spat a globule of something brown. You're dead, all of you, because you keep waiting for the verse where you win. Kevrick's tertiary heart quickened. He'd reviewed the Proxima Centauri footage 17 times, noticed how Volkov's ships interposed themselves between Zelthari salvos and civilian transports, how her laughter during the asteroid charge had been a dirge stripped of joy. She fights for the afterward, he realized, even if she'll never see it. Night cycle brought no reprieve. Kevrick floated in his nutrient bath, the academy's subsonic hum discordant. The dormitory walls thrummed with arguments, cadets practicing human expletives, others weeping in the meditation alcoves. A junior's telepathic spillage leaked through the vents, like she wants us to become monsters. But Kevrick dreamed of the human commander's eyes, the way she'd glanced at her canteen mid-battle, as if remembering a face etched in its steel. Dawn revealed Volkov squatting in the refectory, disassembling a pulse rifle with greasy hands. Cadets gave her birth, their tentacles reflexively nodding. She'd lined the walls with antique human weaponry, blades with notched edges, projectile firearms labeled relics of barbarism by the archive drones. She pointed at Kevrick with a screwdriver. Ever killed anything squid? The refectory stilled. Zelthari didn't kill. They neutralized. They dissuaded. Kevrick unfurled his neural frills in the respect posture. No Ironmother. Volkov snorted. You will. She tossed him a whetstone. Sharpen that. It was a human battle axe, its haft scarred by plasma burns. Kevrick's tentacles recoiled from the iron stench, oxidized blood, ancient sweat. But beneath that, a subtler scent, lavender, as if someone had tried to perfume the violence away. Her lover's weapon, he guessed, the fiancé from the archives, reduced to a footnote. KIA. Siege of Luna Sokolov. Volkov watched him test the blade's edge. You Zelthari think war's a philosophy. She spat again. War's a toilet. Sometimes you gotta stick your hands in. The cadets stirred, bioluminescence flaring indignation crimson. But Kevrick noticed how Volkov's thumb brushed a faded inscription on the axe's grip. Always, it read. A human endearment perhaps. A vow. Training escalated. Volkov marched them through derelict cargo bays, her boots leaving scuff marks the drones couldn't buff out. She taught them to repurpose coolant pipes as spears, to bite with their vestigial beaks. Your rituals got you dead, she growled when Cadet Samara quoted the sonnets of harmonious dissuasion. Dead's not elegant, dead's dull. Kevrick adapted first, not with human savagery, but with a hybrid calculus. During boarding drills, he telepathically synchronized 3 cadets to collapse a bulkhead, burying the aggressor drones under debris. Volkov watched, her canteen paused mid-swig. Cheater, she said. Approval warmed the edges of the insult, but progress fractured. Cadet Raval, his tentacles still raw from plasma burns, confronted Volkov in the armory. You're making us animals, he pulsed,
Bioluminescence flaring accusation read. Volkov didn't look up from the grenade she was rigging. Better a live animal than a dead philosopher. Raval lunged. Kevrik felt the cadet's telepathic intent a millisecond before the strike. A clumsy feint. Volkov sidestepped, disarming him with the whetstone. Raval crumpled, weeping acidic tears. Your enemy won't telegraph shit, Volkov said. She tossed the grenade to Kevrik. Defend yourself or die. No third option. Later, Kevrik found her in the arboretum, staring at the helix trees. The canteen trembled in her hand. They're wrong about you, he pulsed, careful to mute his harmonics. Volkov's laugh was a saw blade. They're right, I'm a butcher teaching lambs to bite. But you're trying to save the lambs, Kevrik ventured. She unscrewed the canteen. Ash swirled in the vodka. Human cremation rites, the archive said. A soul carried forward. Save. She took a long pull. Nah, just buying time. The next cycle, Kevrik discovered Raval's corpse in a coolant vat. Self-termination, the drones reported. Volkov didn't attend the funerary sonnets. She was in the training spire, blasting Viking chants through the sonosphere. Again, she roared as cadets faltered. Your enemy won't pause for elegies. Kevrik joined the drill, his neural frills vibrating with the human dirge. It wasn't music, it was a virus, overriding Zelthari's serenity with desperate pounding truth. Survive, adapt, carry the ashes forward. When Volkov nodded, barely a tilt of her chin, he felt the ghost of her approval like sunlight on a dead world. Chapter 3. The Academy's crystalline spires shuddered as the first torpedoes struck. Alarms warbled in Zelthari minor keys, a distress sonata no cadet had ever heard live. Kevrik clung to the observation deck's rail, neural frills shuddering with the telepathic cacophony of 300 minds realizing, all at once, that war was not a metaphor. Renegade warlord Tazarik's dreadnoughts blotted out, Zelthar Prime, their hulls scarred with glyphs of descent. Too soon, Kevrik thought, ink sacs burning. Volkov's training had been a scratch in the glacier of their pacifism. Now the glacier was melting. Volkov's voice crackled through the Academy's sonosphere, untranslated. All hands battle stations, and someone get me a goddamn drink. The cadets scattered, bioluminescence flaring panic violet. Kevrik floated toward the armory, tentacles moving as if guided by another's will. The halls reeked of molten alloy and human vodka. Volkov stood amid upended crates, slamming a power cell into a jury-rigged railgun. Her canteen hung from a frayed strap, ash-swirled vodka sloshing with each jerky motion. Squid, she barked, tossing him a plasma torch. Cut the gravity in sectors 5 through 8. Make him float. He hesitated. Zelthari doctrine forbade disabling artificial gravity. It risked crushing delicate bioluminescent organs. But Volkov's glare brooked no debate. Her eyes were the color of Luna Sokolov's Dead Seas, and just as merciless. Dead's dull, she snarled, echoing her own mantra. Kevrik severed the conduits. The Academy's spine groaned as weightlessness claimed its lower decks. Cadets tumbled like startled eels, their telepathic screams vibrating through bulkheads. Tazarik's borders, rogue Zelthari with neural frills sheared into jagged crests, floundered in the sudden void. Volkov grinned, bracing her railgun. Ever play whack-a-mole in 0G? She fired. A renegade's skull ruptured, ink misting the air. Kevrik's stomachs churned. Zelthari didn't kill Zelthari. They debated. They dissuaded. Volkov reloaded, her hands steady. Your move, Squid. The renegades adapted. They used their severed frills as blades, telepathic pulses weaponized into neural static. Cadet Samara fell first, her bioluminescence dimming mid-scream. Kevrik caught her telepathic death throes, a sonnet truncated, a chord unresolved. Volkov dragged him behind a shattered console. Focus, grieve later. You don't understand, he pulsed, ink leaking from his sacs. We're connected. Her death is, it's inside me now. Volkov stared at him. For a heartbeat, her mask slipped. He saw the woman beneath, the poet who'd buried her lover's ashes in a canteen, who'd turned war into a language because silence was worse. Then make it mean something, she said, thrusting a grenade into his tentacles. They retreated to the docking bay, cadets falling in ragged formation. Volkov's flagship, a retrofitted human cruiser dubbed Iron Cradle, loomed like a scavenged god. She paused at the airlock, her gaze snagging on the Arboretum's shattered dome. Dusk blossoms floated amid the debris, their petals curling in vacuum death. Pretty, she muttered. It sounded like an elegy. The Iron Cradle shuddered under Tezerek's barrage. Kevrik strapped into a gunnery pod, tentacles interfacing with alien controls. Human tech resisted telepathic sync, crude, unmusical. But Volkov had taught him to listen past the noise. He rerouted power, ignoring warning glyphs. Eyes open, Volkov's voice boomed through the comm. They'll hit the engines first. Classic Zelthari elegance. Tezerek's dreadnoughts spiraled into formation, their weapons humming in harmonic kill chords. Kevrik's neural frills vibrated with the old, instinctive awe. Beautiful, lethal. Volkov's laughter crackled. Yeah, real pretty. Now break it. He fired. The Iron Cradle's railguns screamed raw kinetics, shredding the dreadnought's choreography. Tezerek's fleet scattered, their symmetry ruptured. Cadets whooped in jagged human tongues, bioluminescence flaring combat red. But beauty adapted. Tezerek's flagship pivoted, its keel glowing nova bright. A harmonic cannon, the same that had vaporized Volkov's fiancée at Luna Sokolov. Volkov's breath hitched. Kevrik, take the helm. What? I can't. Take it. She unbuckled her harness, canteen clanking against her hip. And get the pods ready. He understood then, the way she palmed her canteen, the glance at his trembling tentacles. Ironmother, no. She punched the emergency thrusters. The Iron Cradle lurched, hurtling toward Tezerek's cannon. Dead's dull, she rasped. But it's a Helluva teacher. Kevrik's telepathic scream echoed through the ship. Cadets froze mid-motion, neural frills ablaze with borrowed agony. Volkov's final transmission crackled. No Viking chants, no curses, just static, and beneath it, the faint slosh of ash and vodka. The Iron Cradle struck true. Tezerek's cannon imploded, the shockwave ripping his fleet asunder. Kevrik ejected the pods, his tentacles moving on instinct. Behind him, the canteen tumbled through the breach, hydration glinting amid supernova light. In the life pod's sickly glow, cadets huddled, their bioluminescence dimmed to morning blue. Kevrik pressed a tentacle to the viewport. The wreckage churned, Zelthari elegance, and human savagery entwined in mutual annihilation. Then he felt it, the telepathic resonance of Tezerek's flagship, sputtering surrender codes. Volkov's last gambit, her death as a language even Zelthari could parse. She, one, whispered a cadet. Kevrik watched the canteen vanish into debris. No, he thought, she just refused to lose. Chapter 4. The debris field around Zelthar Prime had crystallized into a cemetery of war. Shards of Volkov's Iron Cradle orbited in silent procession, glinting like shattered teeth in the cold light of the star. Kevrik drifted past them in the newly christened hydration station, a salvage skiff retrofitted with Zelthari gravsails and human welds. The panic room's label still glowed faintly above the airlock, its letters smudged by ink-stained tentacles. Ironmother's joke, he thought. Our monument. The Academy's spires rose ahead, their crystalline facets now veined with carbon scoring, and patched with human alloy. Reconstruction drones flitted like metallic beetles, their sonar pings echoing the symphony of rebirth, a Zelthari melody once reserved for supernova remnants. Kevrik's neural frills caught the harmonics as he docked, filtering out the discordant hum of human-engineered reactors beneath the floor plates. Progress, the Federation called it. To Kevrik, it sounded like a requiem played on broken strings. Cadets saluted as he passed, their bioluminescence dimmed to morning blue. They no longer recoiled from the armory's scent of iron and sweat. Some even wore human-style bandoliers, though the Federation had mandated they be woven from dusk blossom silk. Compromise, they called that too. The Arboretum's dome had been rebuilt, but the helix trees grew crooked now. Their branches nodded in defiance of Zelthari topiary algorithms. Kevrik paused beneath them, ink sacs tightening as he spotted the makeshift shrine. Volkov's canteen, salvaged from the wreckage, bolted to a plaque that read liaison, motivator, butcher. Someone had left a battle axe at its base, the blade streaked with fresh polish. She'd hate this, pulsed a voice behind him. Cadet Samara's ghost hovered in the telepathic relays, her consciousness preserved in the Academy's databanks after Tazarik's attack. A Zelthari taboo, now a necessity. She'd steal the vodka and scuttle the plaque. Kevrik agreed. His tentacles brushed the canteen. The hydration label had faded, but the dents from Volkov's grip remained. Zamara's projection flickered, bioluminescence mimicking the stress she could no longer feel. The new cadets asked about her. They think she was larger. Kevrik's ink sacs ached. Humans never seemed larger than when they were gone. Volkov's ghost haunted the Academy's shadows. In the vodka stains on the refectory tables, the Viking chants hummed during night cycle, the way cadets now spat before drills, a myth they'd forged from ash and pragmatism. He floated to the observation deck, now strewn with human star charts and Zelthari sonosphere keys. The holographic projectors whined to life, casting Proxima Centauri's battle in grainy monochrome. New cadets clustered below, their markings rippling nausea green. Observe the tactical innovation, droned instructor Valora, her voice still clinging to pre-war academia. The humans' use of asteroids as weapons interrupted a cadet. His neural frills flared in challenge. Valora's bioluminescence stuttered, as deterrence. Kevrik descended, tentacles trailing through the hologram. Volkov's flagship materialized around him, pixelated and roaring. He remembered the weight of her grenades, the vodka and iron stench of her resolve. She fought to end, he pulsed, modulating his harmonics to the old telepathic warband frequencies. The cadets startled. No instructor had used wartime channels in peacetime. Not to win, not to philosophize, to end it so you wouldn't have to. The cadets exchanged uneasy ripples. One, bolder than the rest, floated forward. Did it work? Kevrik's gaze drifted to the hydration station docked outside. Its panic room shields glimmered, reforged into a nursery for newborn helix saplings. Ask me in a century, he said. Night cycle found him in the training spire, now retrofitted with human obstacle courses and Zelthari meditation pools. Volkov's battle axes hung above the armory, their edges dulled by ceremony. Kevrik ran a tentacle over the notched steel, remembering how she'd laughed when he'd first flinched from their touch. Tools, not trophies, she'd growled. But tools rusted, trophies lingered. A cadet's telepathic ping shivered his frills, a distress frequency. He followed it to the hydroponic gardens, where a junior huddled beneath a dusk-blossom shrub, her tentacles raw from overtraining. They say you knew her. The cadet pulsed, bioluminescence dim with shame. The Ironmother. Kevrik settled beside her. The soil still bore the vodka stench of Volkov's last bender. I knew a woman who carried ashes in her canteen. The Ironmother. That's yours to define. The cadet uncurled, revealing a dented hydration pack labeled motivation in jagged human script. I want to fight like her. But the instructors say. The instructors weren't there. Kevrik plucked a dusk blossom, its petals edged in combat red. Mutation or adaptation. The botanists couldn't agree. Fight like you. That's the only lesson she'd bother giving. Dawn stained the Academy's spires when the alert came. A rogue asteroid, veering off course, a relic from Proxima Centauri, the scanners said. Kevrik manned the hydration station's helm, cadets sinking telepathically behind him. No panic thrummed through their harmonics, only focus, honed by Volkov's ghost. Harmonic solution loaded, pulsed the weapons officer. Shall we? Kevrick eyed the asteroid's trajectory. Scorch marks pocked its surface, the same sigils Volkov's fleet had painted centuries ago. A fanged serpent, a skeletal bird. Load kinetics, he said. The cadets stiffened. Zelthari didn't destroy, they dissuaded. Sir ventured the junior from the gardens, her tentacles steady on the firing console. Regulations state, dead's dull. Kevrick pulsed, Volkov's ghost sharp in his harmonics, but sometimes necessary. The cadet paused, then her bioluminescence flared combat red. Loading kinetics. The asteroid shattered, its fragments singing through the sonosphere like off-key chants. Kevrick watched the debris disperse, Volkov's canteen warm against his thorax. You fight for the afterward, he thought. We're building it, slowly, loudly, imperfectly. Back at the academy, he found the new cadets gathered beneath Volkov's shrine. They'd replaced the battle axe with a hybrid weapon, Zelthari alloy. Human ergonomics. The plaque now read teacher. Zamara's projection shimmered beside him. They'll make her a saint, then a statue, then a footnote. Kevrick unscrewed the canteen, ash swirling in the vodka he dared not drink. She'd prefer the footnote. He poured a drop onto the soil, where the helix trees grew crooked, where the drills still paused, sometimes, for a ragged chorus of Viking chants, where panic rooms bloomed into gardens. Somewhere in the dark, Volkov laughed.